over on Rumble, of course, where they appear to have introduced something new to the live chat. People's names there are different colors now. Also, their channels are linkable. I don't think that they were before, so that's very, very helpful. When you see something interesting, you can go and subscribe to their channel. Hello to everyone out there. I will be making sure we're live on Rumble as well. I think so. I know the chat's live. Yeah, we're live on Rumble. Let's check our tabs really quickly because we have a lot to decompile here. All sorts of good shit. Huge news day. East Palestine updates. New polls with regards to the GOP primary field. Josh Hawley really stepping in it and other things. Sounder Siren 07. Feeling black-pilled lately. It feels like the Uniparty and Democrats have sealed the deal with everything. Or am I reading the tea leaves wrong? I hope that you are. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that you are wrong. Now get another cup of tea and read them again. Seriously, you can't drink enough tea, 7 cups a day for better health. Be pissing like a racehorse, but it's all good. It's good for your bladder and kidneys and shit. Let's see, just a second here. Spontaneous combustion. Are you retarded? Trump's the GOP frontrunner as much as Biden 2020 was the Dem frontrunner. Well, he did get the nomination now, didn't he? To be clear. We will be looking at those polls first. In fact, let's launch right into it. We do have a new poll from Reuters showing Trump at 43%. This is within the GOP field. That's roughly about where he has been, mid to upper 40s, thereabouts. So he's consolidated almost half the party behind him. DeSantis running second, fairly strong position at 31 points. Pence is in third at 7. Somehow there are people who actually want Mike Pence to be the president of the United States, which shows you there are some people that have some genetic issues within the Republican Party. Haley, she gets 4%. And then nobody else was in the poll. They didn't include Rubio, Cruz, Pompeo, Tim Scott, Noem, or Ryan. And also, none of these lists have Rand Paul on them. Of course, if Trump weren't running, I think that he would get in the race and probably be in the double digits. I can't imagine that Rand Paul wouldn't at least be ahead of Pence and Haley. So we've got lots of good shit here. And we've got other polls, too. We had a YouGov poll that was back at about a week ago. Trump at 42, again, roughly unchanged. DeSantis a little bit higher at 32, Pence at 8, Haley at 5. And then they included Rubio and Cruz, who each got 3 points. Now, Ted Cruz has effectively ruled out running if Trump is running. But then again, Nikki Haley did as well. So we'll see what happens. If he were to get in, actually, it would be an advantage for Trump. The more people that get into the race in a packed field, Trump has his way because it doesn't matter if you hit 50%. You don't even need half the party. You just need less than half the party to consolidate behind a handful of other people to distract one another. People early on, therefore, they're bickering more in the early primaries. If you have primaries at all, you've got a technical incumbency for Trump, and then he runs away with it after Super Tuesday. I have a feeling that is what will happen. I think it'll be more than just Trump, Nikki Haley, and also Bolton, who never appears in these polls, despite pledging that he is intending to run. I don't know why they're collating him. They've got a bunch of people that have either pledged not to run if Trump does run or are unlikely to run, like a Tim Ryan or a Ted Cruz, but they don't even put Bolton in. I mean, I know he wouldn't even break 2 points, but, he should be actually on the docket because he has actually said that he's going to run. We will be talking about Barney the dinosaur later. Don't worry. The Landlord Harassment Channel, Free East Palestine. Yes, exactly. Pole Pan, live in the moment, my fellow clankers. Better days ahead. The Defamation League, spreading Barney's bones wasn't enough. We should have crushed them to a fine powder before scattering them. Also, shameless self-promotion of our music. Yeah, they should have been powdered and snorted, apparently. But nobody thought to do that. They thought that the evil dinosaur tyrant was dead. No, necromancy really exists. We'll be talking about that. And also some very fun and heartwarming stories that I have about my own Barney foibles from back in the day. Jonathan Zatman, take my money, say my words. Yeah, if you pay me, I'll say basically anything that isn't against TOS. You can pay me to say whatever you want, as long as it won't get me banned. Mark Giudetti, I live 347 miles due east of East Palestine in the Pocono Mountains. We are about to get 48 hours of rain from Ohio. Should I flee to upstate New York or Vermont till the rain passes, or is the rain safe? At that point, that far away, you're probably only getting a little bit of extra acidity in the rain, so I wouldn't worry about it as far as health concerns. If you were within 100 miles and you had a rainstorm, I would say, well, you might want to get your well checked and go get a physical before the rain falls. Just for legal purposes, I think you're fine. Mr. Wonderful. Can't wait for Trump in the debates, assuming they have them. Next news story. This is about East Palestine, so we'll just cover this right off. Colin Rugg weighing in here. Reporter Cogs on the ground in East Palestine says the entire town smells like chemicals. Instead of sending the next billion to Ukraine, we should send it to Ohio. But here's the problem. The county that was impacted by the East Palestine train derailment went heavily for Trump. Why the hell would Buttigieg or Joe Biden give a shit about people there getting cancer? No, they don't care. They don't care about anyone who's not donor class anyway. They wouldn't care if a bunch of Democrats died. If this were in the ghetto, if this were in some outer Brooklyn area, with low rent housing and a bunch of people got exposed to carcinogens, they wouldn't care about that either. They would pretend to care a little bit more, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't do much more. I can believe it. Normally, when I see things like this from off-hook journos, I tend to be skeptical. I say, well, okay, you're saying that it smells like chemicals, but I can't go there and actually sniff the air myself. I will remain open-minded about this. Given the amount of actual material that was burned off, and given the size of the disaster, which is considerable, I will believe this. I would point out that the legacy media in the last 24 hours has finally been forced to actually cover this story. The New York Times is covering it, although they're deflecting a little bit. Their coverage was, this has caused trauma in the local population. And it's got some really family-friendly sounding spiel, by the way. Basically, the tooting of the horns of the trains used to be so comforting for me. Now it causes me to have the shakes. It makes me really, really scared and stuff like that. So they're sort of they're punting on the issue for various reasons. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. I'm not first today. Yes, but still, you have the meat. Got to get some of that. Mr. Pockix X. When I was a kid growing up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, I had a Barney the dinosaur costume that looked like a fursuit. Yeah, many such cases. We'll be talking about Barney and his tyranny. His reign of tyranny is returning. We must muster arms, clankers. Mimetic warfare is ahead. Drennan, Sticks, I will fight in your Barney meme jihad. Clank. Yeah, why not have some fucking fun? Hunter Wadley, Trump will pick Lake or Gabbard. It's just his thing. To go Paul will be boring to the MAGA normies, and yes, there are MAGA normies. I would still say Rand Paul would be the best choice for a running mate for Donald Trump. And by the way, advice to the Trump campaign. In order to preclude all of these other morons who are trying to run to be VP anyway, in some cases, Nikki Haley, choose your running mate early and often. Don't bother waiting until you actually clinch the nomination. Announce a prospective running mate right off the bat. Have them as a campaign proxy and send them out there. Just pretend that you have already been nominated and the rest will follow. Some people will drop probably as a result of that. But don't do it too early. Wait until the primaries have almost begun and then really shake things up. By the way, get back on Twitter. But yeah, you could do worse than Gabbard or Carrie Lake. You could do worse than them. They would be viable. I wouldn't want Nikki Haley to be the vice president. I think that being one heartbeat away from the presidency when you're a warmongering neocon probably is not something that would appeal to me. Yeah. She doesn't like Nikki Haley either. Tricky Nikki. The Copper Owl. I swear I was just trying to resurrect the Kaiser. Yeah, Barney Necromancy. Oh, Jesus. Darius Harvey. Trump 2024. Maybe Trump Jr. 28. Lol. Just kidding. Yeah, I don't think that Don Jr., he's got the mimetic experience. He's relatively well-spoken. You could do worse than him as a candidate, but dynastic candidates have problems. We had, not that long ago, the no more Bushes, no more Clintons thing. I think you'd have the same with Trump. Donald Trump really is a one-off in American history. Really is that kind of Americana story, which gives him a mystique that his children don't have because they were raised by someone who was already massively wealthy when they were born. I don't think that they should enter politics. Maybe branch out in business, maybe lower end politics, a governor here, a senator there, or something like that. But I don't think the presidency. I don't think that'd be a good idea. So yeah, in East Palestine, the entire town smells like chemicals. Under normal circumstances, I would be skeptical of a singular one-off claim of this sort, but yeah, I can believe it. I mean, they burned an enormous amount of vinyl chloride there, among other various things that the EPA decided were present that were not in the initial release, just to be clear, which is probably for a reason. Yeah, whoops. Shit, that last train car had something different in it. Yeah, it had hydrazine in it or something. Yeah, I'm not going to be covering Chinese spy balloons. That's the big distraction right now. Next news story, Josh Hawley, who otherwise, generally speaking, I don't really have a problem with Josh Hawley. He's a bit of a hawk on abortion, which I'm not. But generally speaking, he's all right overall. Let's set the 16 as the age requirement for kids to use social media. Stop letting these companies exploit our kids, says Josh Hawley. Here's my problem with this. I'm amenable to the concept of protecting children, of course, as anyone else is. The problem is that such an institution would require an internet ID. It would nullify the Fourth Amendment insofar as digital communications goes. That's number one. Number two, can we not see this being misused to also undermine even further than it already is? You've got that pre-bunking going on now with Google, the First Amendment on the internet. When anytime that a politician starts talking about think of the children, we have to protect the kids. Otherwise they'll be led astray, they'll be killed or whatever. So you have to pass the law that I'm proposing right now. Isn't it always a pig in a poke? Has there ever been an instance in which think of the children has been brought up in modern times when actually protecting children was the actual goal? Think of the kids. We have to invade Iraq. Think of the kids. We need to censor the radio more. Patriot Act. Think of the kids. We need more Chinese-sourced lithium and electric cars because gas evil or something like that. It's never really about the kids. The kids are always a foil. The idea of preventing people from the age of 16 down from using social media, number one, it would require draconian authoritarian government action. There is no other way to implement such a thing. It would require the legalese. Number two, it wouldn't really be successful. People would bypass that at their leisure. It would happen. Number three, speaking as a millennial, I can remember being on the internet when I was 11, 12 years old and fucking around and seeing like the encyclopedia of diarrhea and stuff that wasn't really appropriate, .com era. We were told the same thing at the time. Think of the children. We need to crack down on these websites that have material on them that aren't good for kids to watch. They've got sexuality. They've got the poop jokes and stuff like that. We were fed the same thing back then when we were young. And I see a lot of millennials beginning to do that sellout thing that Gen X did when they hit the same relative age, like in their 30s sometime usually, and saying, well, this time it's different. There really is a problem here that we need to tackle and address. Let's give the government more power. The same government that is literally trying to indoctrinate your kids right now. Let's give them more power over the internet and every problem will disappear. That'll work very, very well. Here's my suggestion as a counterpoint to Josh Hawley. Put out circulars warning parents of the danger of the internet because apparently some of these parents are brain dead, and encourage them to do their job as parents. It's as simple as that. But that would require effort on behalf of the parents, and it wouldn't make money for the government, of course. So they're not going to do that. They want you to give them more power instead. E. Lombard, thank you for consistent, truthful news. You're very welcome. Mr. Wonderful, although I don't think we will see a male VP anytime soon in the future for any party because of current reasons, I am keen on a Trump Gaetz scenario. That could work, potentially. Yeah, it could. I would prefer Rand Paul. I would put it this way. If let's say that Trump is the nominee, Here's my ratings list. Number 1 would be Rand Paul. I realize that he's valuable in the Senate, but that is a fairly safe seat anyway if he endorses somebody. Get a knockoff Rand Paul, have Rand Paul endorse him, and the person wins. So you don't lose a Senate seat. Rand Paul's number 1. Carrie Lake is probably number 2. She's core MAGA, would solidify the ticket. I don't know where Tulsi Gabbard would fit on the list. I think she's rising up because she's decided to completely upend her former anti-gun views. But having been a former Democrat, that could rankle some partisan voters. So we have to wait and see what she does in the next year or so. There are others. You could have little Marco as VP. Wouldn't that be funny? Imagine Donald Trump at meetings berating him and belittling him. Red Z, Sticks, in Japan, the letter L is lacists. Interesting. Hunter Wadley, Sticks, can you explain to fellow clankers that if you have the goods, your last heartbeat has to win votes, not heads, unfortunately? Yeah, ultimately, if you don't get more than 50% of the votes, you lose. Unless it's a multi-way race. You have to get the most votes. A lot of people don't think with their heads. Ultimately, they're very emotional. They're lemmings. They're easily led. And unfortunately, you have to appeal to them. That's the masses at large. They're not thinking about reason or civics or anything like that. They weren't taught reason or civics. They were taught to memorize for tests in school. They were not taught anything about economics for the most part, other than basic math. And they hated it. And so you have to appeal to them. Yeah. Cold Summer 91. I heard about Barney revival the other day. Thankfully, I was more into Thomas the Tank Engine. Yes, Thomas the Tank Engine was funny. And Berenstain Bears back in the day. Thomas the Tank Engine was great. I can remember one episode. Can't remember exactly how it went. And what the fuck was it? He was one of the trains was, say in their words, smashed to smithereens. And for some reason, I thought the word smithereens was funny. And so I kept repeating it, annoying my mom. We will talk about Barney stories from my youth, by the way. Deus Flex, when he thought of Paul Mazzaro, couldn't get any more off the deep end. He posted himself with a patch imagining Stephen Bandera, of all people. Oh, imaging Stephen Bandera. He deleted the post, but was too late. I don't know anything about that. Hunter Wadley, that goes for both sides. By the way, I would agree with you, Distorted Noise, the Teletubbies were the worst. Yes, I would rather watch Barney on loop than watch the Teletubbies. And that's going some. Next news story, Paula Reed, CNN reporting in, archived, of course. Links in the description to everything that I'm talking about. Breaking, DOJ formally decides not to charge Congressman Matt Gaetz in sex trafficking probe. I'll get into why. Prosecutors have been informing witnesses today of final decision by DOJ leadership after investigators recommended not moving forward back in the fall. More to come on CNN. For what little it's worth, CNN, who gives a fucking shit? The cope on this one is really, really great because basically it boils down to, well, the DOJ may not be charging him, but he might still be guilty. This doesn't actually exonerate him. The fact that there wasn't enough evidence to even fucking bring charges, despite the DOJ being staffed by people who are openly hostile to anyone remotely associated with MAGA. There wasn't enough evidence, but that doesn't mean that he's innocent. Oh, no, he probably still sex trafficked people. There's just no evidence of it over the course of years of material that were investigated. I see Tiedrick and others rambling about Venmo, paper trails, and shit like that don't even, in many cases, exist. No, the fact is this. Matt Gaetz did nothing wrong. There's no evidence of him doing wrong because of that. And so he's not being charged. And so he'll continue on in Congress. And the Blue Anon people that were like 2 more weeks and we'll really get him this time. This will be the thing that starts the fall of the dominoes that leads all the way to Trump. Matt Gaetz falls and he rolls over. And then he gives testimony about, I don't know, Lindsey Graham or Mike Pence or someone. And then they have to roll over. And then finally, they talk about the big bloated orange baby that pooped all over the White House. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump is dragged out kicking and screaming in the dead of night before full news crews, of course, just like a Roger Stone situation or Giuliani, and humiliated, and he's pooping everywhere. And he's just a big crying baby and, fat and shit like that. This is actually their kind of bizarre fantasy. they've been having for some time now. Now, the DOJ would have loved to charge Matt Gaetz, but when they looked into the information, they realized that there was no capability to charge him. Not without having a really unfortunate scenario in which it is predetermined that he, escapes. He gets off completely because he did nothing wrong. There's no evidence that they have, possibly a dismissal of the case if they bring it in the first place by a court. And he can then have witnesses, and he can give testimony, and the witnesses can give testimony, and he can put forth all manner of other evidence, and he can have people subpoenaed to come in and give testimony even if they don't necessarily want to. It would be a freak show. What would happen is the DOJ would get cast off as politicized, which it is. Let's face it. DOJ gets dragged. Biden gets dragged. Matt Gaetz detractors get dragged. He exonerates himself fully. He walks out of the courtroom with that shit-eating grin that he sometimes has, like the dude from The Shining, and then he humiliates them all and then probably proceeds to sue several people for defamation. They didn't want that to happen, so they realized that it was probably a good idea not to bother pressing the charges because the charges would never stick. The fact is that Matt Gaetz did nothing wrong. There was never any evidence against him. I warned the liberals not to get their hopes up months ago, but, they kept masturbating to the concept of Matt Gaetz getting thrown in federal prison because he's fucking kids and stuff like that. But there was never any actual reason to believe any of these things. There's literally nothing. As far as the evidence goes, it was a blank page. Well, we think that he's guilty. Somebody claims that Matt Gaetz met him when they were 17 or something like that. So the tale goes. And, they banged him basically. Well, that's not proof of anything. That's I believe, a retracted claim anyway at this point. So Matt Gaetz is in the clear. But of course, the salty blue anon conspiracy theorists won't give that any credit. Well, Merrick Garland really tried, but at the end of the day, sadly, we have to let him go, even if we know that he's guilty. Hunter Wadley, can you explain the mental disorder that is Rob Reiner? No, because that would require that I have a meaningful intuition about absolute fucking insanity. I'm a little bit out there and eccentric and weird, but I'm not on his level of insane. Yeah, and poor Matt Gaetz, he had to deal with this fucking horseshit for an extended period of time, even though there was never any evidence against him whatsoever. They kept pushing the story because they wanted to destroy his credibility, and it failed. And now he will be reelected, of course, on the power of this partially. And so he'll be in Congress for an extended period of time, and now they have to deal with him. AK-1776, isn't Pence supposed to testify against Trump or something like that? Or is it MSNBC info? Half true. He has been subpoenaed, but he's claiming, hey, I was VP at the time that these events occurred. You can't subpoena me. I have executive privilege. We'll see how that works out. I have a feeling that they'll deny the executive privilege argument, but ignoring congressional and similar subpoenas at this point apparently is like a national pastime. So be funny to see them try to compel him to come before the court. See Hunter Biden's ignoring subpoenas at the moment. Next news story. Senator Dianne Feinstein appears unaware of her retirement announcement during reporter gaggle, according to reports. Feinstein announced her retirement on Tuesday. I'm going to go back down through this a little bit. Democrats, California Senator Dianne Feinstein appeared unaware of her own retirement announcement Tuesday, telling a group of reporters at the Capitol that she hadn't made a decision on her future, despite announcing just hours before that she would not be seeking re-election. According to multiple reports, a Feinstein staffer quickly notified the senator that the statement had already been made on her retirement, prompting her to say that she was unaware the information had been released. I wonder why the fuck she's chosen to retire at this particular moment. It's almost like all the tales from the last 2 years about her having dementia are true. Reporters present for the interaction quickly took to Twitter to report on Feinstein's apparent confusion. And these are people that like the unit party. These are neoliberal reporters, by the way. Asked by reporters about her announcement to resign, Feinstein says, if I haven't made that decision, I haven't released anything. A staffer then told the senator that a statement had been released. Feinstein responded saying, I didn't know they put it out. One reporter wrote, later clarifying he meant retire instead of resign. I mean, come on, it's the same fucking thing. Feinstein on her retirement. I haven't made that decision. I haven't released anything. Staffer, we put out the statement. Feinstein, you put out the statement? I didn't know they put it out. Another wrote. So Feinstein has been so out of it for so long that she doesn't even remember that a couple of hours prior, she fucking said that she wasn't going to seek re-election. This is the Democratic Party in a nutshell. And as I analyzed the other day, keep in mind that Feinstein is not necessarily the worst member of their party. Yes, terrible on guns, terrible on the First Amendment. We covered that already. But at the very least had the cojones to stand for the filibuster, even if for entirely self-serving reasons. Hey, I want negotiation because then my vote actually matters. Fuck off, unipartyists. It was the only thing that she ever did in her entire Senate career, by the way, that made sense. She had a Chinese spy as her limo driver for about a decade, so she's not exactly playing with a full deck. This Feinstein moment leads me to believe also something else. Within 2 years, she'll be dead. If she is at the level of Alzheimer's where she can't remember that 2 hours before she put out a statement that she wasn't going to seek re-election, she's moved beyond like the Biden level of early stage Alzheimer's into the intermediate stage. It's very unlikely that she'll be able to walk within a year and a half or so. I do feel sorry for her on that token, damage as though she's done to the Republic and to the Constitution, because I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but that the writing is on the wall. She does have Alzheimer's. She's almost 90. She hasn't been doing her job really in a couple of years anyway, and that's just the way that it is. The Grizzly. How can we function as a nation like this with all these blue anon non-thinkers who are permanently brain damaged by the American education system that we must protect at all costs, maggots? Well, some of them can still be turned, especially if you're younger, you're more malleable in your thinking. I like it when right-wingers write off Gen Z and they're like, oh, they've gone so far left, they're like a bunch of commies. Those are the people you should be attempting to talk to and to convince, because as people get older, they get set in their ways and it's harder to convince them. The liberals realize this. That's why they focus on the young. So match them. Hunter Wadley, what do you plant in the Netherlands? I planted an avocado tree in my yard yesterday. Klykers, are you planting too? There's a little bit of a garden out there. Had to scrub the tiles actually the other day. They were covered in moss. Do another application probably in a few days more. I'm not going to be planting as much though, because there's a possibility we'll be moving, possibly to a place with a bigger yard and garden, which I would like. Because then I can grow more. I would like to have a kitchen garden here and then also rehab the garden in Rutland or someplace in the United States. There's so much work to be fucking done. Gardening is one of the greatest endeavors, by the way. It's one of the greatest things you can do. Next news story. NATO allies worry about dwindling ammo stockpiles as they try to keep Ukraine's troops firing. Yes, apparently the entire Western world combined, the United States, Canada, the Germans, the French, the UK, Poland, all of these other major countries, Italy, Spain, apparently all of us combined are not capable of producing enough bullets and rockets for the Ukrainians. They're expending so many goddamn bullets that we're beginning to run out. How low were our stockpiles to begin with? How many trillions of bullets do we really need to fend off an invasion of Ukraine by Russia that we're not even militarily party to? How many fucking bullets? Jesus Christ, just give them to the militia. Give them to the U.S. citizens instead for free, and we'll be able to safeguard our homeland for the next 100 years. That's a lot of fucking goddamn bullets now, isn't it? Who's their daddy? No gardening in East Palestine. Well, you can, but your plants may glow in the dark or something. Francisco Alcala, my normie boomer boss started questioning the climate change BS today. Narrative collapsing? Yeah. I'll be talking, I think, about that tomorrow. Greta Thunberg coming out, actually, in separate news and talking about how the Western world needs to spend trillions of dollars to combat climate change. Yeah. That's a lot of trees died to make your new book, by the way. She was flashing that earlier. Fair Frozen 55. Consider the following. Ukraine isn't using all the bullets they get sent. They are in the black market. Yeah, some of them are. We've seen heavy weapons. We've seen anti-tank missiles have been offloaded through the black market through Ukraine, necessitating the U.S. troops quasi-internationally, legally go around the country to make sure that the stockpiles are intact. They have to check up on them once in a while. Here's what we should do. Deregulate the bullet production market in the United States and make a shit ton of money. Do lend-lease. Don't just give them the fucking bullets. Make them pay for them, but do it later. That's perfectly fine. We make money, people die, and they're going to die anyway because of all these war hawks. At the very least, we make a return in the end. Nobody has bothered to suggest this, by the way. Americans don't have tea kettles. It's true. I have never seen one, says John Menard. We do in Rutland. We have a tea kettle. I use the French press for coffee and stuff. And for tea, you just use a tea bag usually. But it is true that the co-op hippie tea, like the loose tea, is superior. It's superior in flavor and freshness. And you should get it that way and use a tea kettle. It's also cheaper long run. You're not paying for the tea bag and the little staple that they put in it and shit like that. Let me see. Susan Wojcicki, the Bolshevik. That's not true. I've seen a tea kettle. Yeah, we've got one in Rutland. My grandfather, speaking of dementia a la Feinstein, when he started getting a little bit loopy, he burned up a tea kettle at one point. He put the water in, put it on the stove, but then he forgot it was there. And it was literally red hot at some point and had to be thrown out in the snow. He was trying to retrieve it. And it's like, you just buy a new tea kettle. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so NATO is running out of bullets. Doesn't this make you feel safe, fellow people in NATO countries? We're going to run out of military supplies because we keep sending more and more of them to the Ukrainian front. I think we should just keep them domestically. If the United States really wants to safeguard all of the NATO countries, all it has to do is promote the Second Amendment concept throughout those countries. There should be more guns in more hands. There should be more ammo in more hands. People should take training, know how to use them. They become uninvadable. Who would want to invade, for instance, let's take Germany, for example. They've got some fairly stringent gun control, although you can get guns there. Imagine that 80 million people in Germany are fully proficient with the use of a firearm and own one. Who's going to fucking invade you? Who wants to take that level of attrition? Because tanks and drones can't sit on the street corner and police things. You need people on the ground to do that. It would be difficult. And that's Germany. Germany's a little bit smaller than the state of Texas. They could pull it off. Here in the Netherlands, millions of people, if they were properly armed, it'd be damn difficult to subdue them. The United States is the only country in the world with this particular advantage other than Switzerland, which is very small, remote, tends to be hyper neutral, and nobody's going to fuck with them anyway. The United States should take this basic principle and attempt to export it to other countries, along with the concept of free expression. Cold Summer 91. I agree with young people still being salvageable. A lot of young millennials were saved during Trump's presidency. I know, because I am one of them. Yeah, I mean, I had been a liberal for years as well. I voted Obama in 2008. And, I was salvageable, quite clearly. James Flowers. I'm more concerned with pollution than some nebulous climate difference. I agree. Plant trees and pick up trash or shut the fuck up is how I feel about it. You couldn't be more right. Next news story, Nicola Sturgeon has quit, over in Scotland. I don't have too much to say about it. It actually came yesterday when I was prepping for the live stream, and I'm like, you know what, fuck it. I'll just talk about it tomorrow. Nicola Sturgeon is officially leaving once a new leader can be found for Scotland. She served for a considerable number of years. She's part of the Scottish independence movement, so they want their indie ref in order to rip Scotland away from the UK. They were prefacing this for a while. The peak performance for the Scotland independence movement was really prefaced on Brexit. As Brexit became more popular, the people in Scotland that support the concept, and it's a left-wing independence movement, by the way. Nicola Sturgeon is effectively a socialist. Their concept was, well, you want independence from this other group of people, so we want independence from you. And how can you possibly deny us that? How can you have your Brexit? We can't have a Scottish independence referendum. Now, I would note that they had an actual referendum and it didn't pass. It failed and has never been more popular since the point in time in which it failed. It's considerably less popular now. She's leaving because she's reigning over a chunk of the UK, which is dysfunctional, backwards politically, and far left. And that far leftism has caused problems. Brexit was partially prefaced as a patch on this basic issue and has been castigated since then. Supposedly, Brexit is responsible, for example, for the UK's economy having a glut at the moment. despite the fact that every other economy suffered basically identical overall conditions. It's very funny because I remember years ago when Brexit first happened, I think 2 days later, I predicted that they would do something like that. The next time there's an economic problem, they're going to blame Brexit. They're going to tell you need to get back into the EU as quickly as possible, which they're literally pushing for even now. They will blame Brexit, even though they themselves will be manufacturing a crisis. And that'll be the whole pig in a poke bullshit. They'll create a crisis. They'll convince you that it's not the banks, it's not the government, it's not regulation, it's nothing like that. It's the fact that you happen to have gained nominal independence. And that's what caused your economy to flatline. Nicola Sturgeon, following in the wake, of course, of that goofball that was running New Zealand. It turns out that having someone elected for woke reasons may not always be a good thing. Sometimes they may fuck up. Rhythmic Riot, new nickname for Nikki Haley, Tits Romney. No, I like Tricky Nikki best, or Nikki the Neocon. Otherwise, you get called a sexist and then nobody's receptive to the mimetic message. Hunter Wadley, as a Floridian, I'll be voting for Trump regardless. I love my governor. No Floridian should vote for DeSantis for president. We have it too good here. Yeah, I think DeSantis should just finish out his term there, wait into the future. And in 2028, if he wants to run, of course, that's a different story. Nicola Sturgeon. Yeah, sturgeon is also a fish. We've got those up in Vermont, in Lake Champlain. Sometimes they get 12 fucking feet long. I wonder why people say that they see a lake monster in Lake Champlain. It's because tourists that aren't used to fish being bigger than them, they don't realize that that can exist in a lake. They think of a fish and they think of a little perch like this long, or a bass or a salmon or something like that. They don't think of sturgeons, though. They look like fucking dinosaurs, too. They're all scaly and whacked out. They look like miniaturized dragons. Sort of like when people see giant salamanders over in China or something, and shit, this amphibian's 4 feet, 5 feet long. It looks like it could swallow my hand. Shit. Then I'm just wondering if any pervert ever goes over there to fuck one of them. You know, today we're gonna screw a salamander. This will probably be the next TikTok challenge. The Ahagao faces. Oh, land of the free. Why can't I rinse my balls at the Burger King soda dispenser? Exactly. That V8, it really gets you going. Scrub it in there. There won't be any staining left. There won't be any skin either. But if the skin's gone, then you can't get ball cancer or anything like that because your balls fall off. Yeah, northern pike too. Those can get big as fuck. Muskies also. Have you ever seen the teeth on a muskegon? I think that's exactly how it's pronounced. A muskie, colloquially speaking. I think those can get about 3-4 feet long. Those would take a chunk out of you the size of a golf ball pretty easily. Alex Better, folks who cries about climate change are okay with feeding the third world, endless immigration and housing development. They don't think ahead or are bots. Yeah, mostly. I've never seen any so-called environmentalist that rants about climate change like a Greta Thunberg planting a tree. Now, have you? I don't see any of the bigwigs that constantly talk about climate change giving up their second homes or their oversized first homes, for that matter. They're not living in a yurt. They're not living in a little cabin or something like that, or an eco home. They're not living in the pod. They still eat filet mignon and shit like that. They love their lobster and their caviar and all of their expensive imported goods. Hunter Wadley, we have Tarpon. We won. And now I've got an announcement for all of you. It pains me to say, but Barney the dinosaur sadly is back. To all of my fellow millennials, I apologize for this. This timeline is not quite as I had wanted. I will use as much of my mimetic magic as possible to try to defeat Barney the dinosaur, but we're going to need some help here. So all you fellow magi out there, get your fucking wands, your crystals, your grimoires, and so forth, because Mattel has decided to engage in necromancy. Backstory. Barney the dinosaur, for the two people out there that don't know what that is, extremely cloying, extremely dumbed down little kid show from like the 90s through the dawn of the 2000s. I think it ran for about 9 or 10 years or thereabouts. Has been a meme since then too. You still see stuff about it now, but that's when the main show was running. You had lunchboxes and plushies and all of this fucking shit. And Barney was annoying, to say the least, and the butt of many a joke by people in my particular age range. The NPR article talking about this is like, well, this well-loved millennial era Dinosaur is now coming back thanks to Mattel. Oh, hi, kids. Barney says, touch yourself in inappropriate ways. This was literally a joke, by the way, at the time. Once you were old enough to understand stranger danger, Barney became much more strange, much more weird, because you've got this person, you know that it's an adult, and they're in the dinosaur suit, and they're constantly like hugging and dancing around with kids. It just seemed a little bit suspect at the time. I'm not making any allegations, but it was a funny joke anyway. And I would like to tell a couple of fucking stories from when I was a kid. First, you had the Barney theme song, you know, I love you, you love me, and I can't remember the rest of it, but I can definitely remember the riff on that song that was made at the time, which was, I love you, you love me, let's team up and kill Barney. With a great big punch and Barney hits the floor, no more purple dinosaur. And I put it out on Twitter a couple days ago, and there are 1,000 different variants of that, which I suspected to be the case. There was no love for Barney among people who were 6 or older. I can remember like really, really little kids who were like 3 or 4 at the time. Sometimes they would watch Barney because their moron parents would prop them up in front of the TV so they didn't have to deal with them for an hour. Anyone in my age range, and I am a goddamn central goddamn core millennial, did not like Barney. I never saw anyone profess that they liked Barney. I never saw anyone say, hey, Barney's okay. I only heard jokes about Barney being fucking sucky. And of course, you know, by the time you're that age, you've always got that one kid who knows more swear words than the rest of them, and then talks about Barney, and everyone's talking about Barney eating shit or something like that. Yeah, again, Josh Hawley, eat your heart out, just to be clear. I can remember another time. I think this was when I was in probably about 3rd grade, I would say. I think somewhere around 3rd grade, maybe 2nd grade. I can't exactly remember the year. And I was in school, and there was a little place. The main classroom where you were learning in was one part of it. And then there were a bunch of bookshelves. And there was a little back area so that when you weren't doing like your lesson work, like math or science or something, the kids would go back there. And it was playtime. There were books, there were toys, there was everything else under the sun. And it was fun. And I can remember there was a Barney toy there. And of course, I did not like Barney, basically echoing everybody else. So I slit Barney's throat. And I think I may have talked about this 5 or 6 years ago. I slit Barney's throat. I can't remember exactly how. I think I found a piece of glass, actually. And I climbed up on a couple of chairs, and I slid his slit throat onto the ceiling fan, fluff and all. It was a little bit of a snowstorm that day. And then I turned the ceiling fan on. So all of it was Barney, who had been hanged off the ceiling fan, going around in circles. And the fluff was coming out of his neck. And oh my God, I thought it was one of the fucking funniest things ever. Epic, epic own. And the teacher came back, of course. And we had a no snitching code, as any reasonable group of fairly young people do. When something funny like that happens, you don't snitch on the person who did it. And I can remember the teacher's like, who did this? And I think I had a toy monkey that was hanged off of the ceiling fan too, for no apparent reason. Nobody told who had done it. So we all got timeout. So we couldn't go outside for, you know, the fucking recess or whatever it was. And but it was so funny that nobody told him who did it. And it was fucking great. Oh my God. There was like fluff everywhere. And I think they threw the toy out afterwards. That's what I'm talking about. Adam Berger, as your attorney, I advise you to stop telling this story. Yes, I helped to kill Barney. Here's the thing, though. Mattel is basically doing necromancy, and I talked about this morning. Here's what's actually, to be a little bit more serious, it's corporate greed, which is what pisses me off more than Barney just fucking sucking in general. Barney died back in the early 2000s. As a franchise, there was no new material there. Yeah, you still got plushies and shit like that, but you don't have a show. You don't have a computer game or anything like that. And so it died down. What Mattel is attempting to do is convince really, really goddamn stupid millennials who were exposed to it when they were back as little kids to expose their kids to it. Because what are the millennials, the core and younger millennials doing now? They're having kids for the first time. So, hey, you're stressed out, parents? Put your kid in front of the TV. We've got Barney the dinosaur. Only now it's digitized. It's no longer a person in the suit. It's a digital image of Barney. They have literally conducted diplomacy and turned Barney into a technologically adept fucking super demon. So we need to get our magical crystals out and recapture this goddamn demonic spirit right quick, because otherwise the world will be overrun with I love you and you love me all over again. And other people will have to suffer just as we did back in the 1990s. So one kid show no one had a problem with because there was never anything beyond like a 2-year-old mental level on it. Way to dumb down your fucking kids. Put the cooking show on. Put a documentary on or something. Fuck Barney. And Grant, Barney the dinosaur versus Stolas the owl. Let's go. Yeah, Mattel has a lot of money though, so we're going to have to work hard. That Manx guy, $5. No comment. Thank you very much. Don Jones, Boomer here. I hated Barney. Pure condescension towards children. Yes, exactly. I noted that. At 5 or 6 children switched from I love Barney to I hate Barney. For your information, Barney was arrested for shoplifting at Tower Records back in the day. Yeah, I mean, think about these kid shows too. I mean, when you've got a real person like in a suit. Once they're done with the show, they go back to their trailer and, you know, they smoke weed, they drink beer, they have sex and all this stuff. You're basically lying to the kids. You're convincing them that there's this dinosaur that's trying to teach them their ABCs or something like that. God, if you want to lie to kids for a moral or a educational reason, at least go with Santa Claus or something innocuous like that. Yes, I know the Coca-Cola company basically minted that, but somehow it's Barney's worse. Desiccated corpse. Have you read up about the Michigan mass shooting? Also, Barney creeped me out as a kid a lot. Yes, fuck Barney. We must do everything that we can in our power to see to it that we undo this evil necromantic spell. And no, I didn't actually. I try to ignore shootings at this point because it's a formulaic how it works out. If the shooter's white, it's white supremacy. If the shooter's not white, it's gun violence. And then they just run with it and talk about how sad everyone is and how we need to stop this from happening, but they never actually put forth any proposals that'll stop it from happening. So I've decided to tune the morons out. Psychophantic. Remember when the US government got caught using Barney as torture? I thought it was Justin Bieber songs, actually. In Gitmo, wasn't it? Something like that. Mr. Wonderful, cutting up Barney was how Ted Bundy started. I look at it as a service to mankind, one less Barney toy in the world. By the way, please don't send any more super chats because at some point here, I have other things I must do. Leftovers tonight, so it's not cooking, but I got to go out to the store and get snacks and shit like that. Jim Morrison, climate change people are concerned about humanity, must sea level change in agriculture, but their solutions harm humanity with scarcity. The earth loves CO2. Warmth and CO2 equals more plants. Yeah, they never have quite explained to anyone who's taken 8th grade level biology how more CO2 in the atmosphere is magically going to make us all die. We got a couple over on Rumble. Nicky Boy Noob, we need people to dig deep to find some based quotes from OG Barney, similar to Mr. Rogers. Yeah, good luck finding anything that's halfway intelligent from a Barney show. Maybe you can do a deep fake of him. Oh, hey, kids. You're my friends. Friends don't tell anyone else their secrets, right? Can Barney tell you a secret? Barney killed a man 10 years ago. Oh my God, it would be so great. But you can't actually put that on YouTube anymore. They changed their TOS last month to make sure that you couldn't have objectionable content related to like beloved kids characters. Oh boy, by the way, what coincidental timing for the return of Barney in a digital form. You're not allowed to have Barney the serial killer confessing to a group of school children about his various high crimes and misdemeanors or his various perversions. SJW Whitney, they did the same thing with Thomas the Tank Engine. Used to be real models, then went to CGI. Sucks now. Yeah, Thomas the Tank Engine was on point. I watched that as a kid. Arthur, I liked Arthur a little bit later on. Because Arthur's got massive ADHD, he's constantly having delusional daydreams where he's imagining himself to be in outer space and crazy shit like that. And Buster's clearly, he's hopped up on something. By the way, I actually made a post years ago, I think it might have been 3 years, about how every Arthur character represents a mental illness. God, I have to do that again. Not a bad account. Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination, but when he's tall, he's what we call a dinosaur sensation. Barney comes to play with us whenever we may. Yeah, bring back Peter Rabbit or something like that. Peter Rabbit was good as a kid. All the old, the movies of that and stuff. That was great. God, I've still, I watched the fucking Henson's Bunny Picnic not that long ago, like last year, and that's still watchable. That's the same mental level easily as Barney, but at least it's entertaining. You've got some of that weird humor that you get with Jim Henson material. Barney doesn't have that. It's a dinosaur dancing around telling you, well, when the light is red on the traffic light, traffic has to stop. When it's green, you can go. Okay, Barney, Sesame Street already taught me that. And then Bert and Ernie were fighting, and that was actually funny, but just dancing around and shit. Barney says, don't tell anyone when I touch you like that. I mean, again, the jokes write themselves. Fraggle Rock was good. I will simp for Fraggle Rock. Used to watch that with my family all the time. I liked the Muppets and all this stuff. Swedish Chef, by the way, most underrated Muppet. Hergen. And the chickens would always run away or something when he was trying to get them turned into food. A little bit morbid. A little bit of Muppet morbidity was much better than Barney could ever be. I know that some of that comes from the 80s. It was rerun mode by that point, but it was much, much better. Gen X had much, much better programming for kids than millennials did. Abso-fucking-lutely. Yeah, Beaker was good as well, but I will simp for the Swedish Chef. Swedish Chef, and also Gonzo was funny because he was just constantly going crazy. And for Sesame Street, I liked Grover. I never liked Elmo, and when they turned it into Elmo's World, basically, that was for a while after Tickle Me Elmo dropped. Sesame Street effectively became like 60% just Elmo's World, and I fucking hated it. And I was older at the time. By the time that happened, like I was a little bit old to even like Sesame Street, but I like Bert and Ernie and some of these other characters for their foibles so much, I would continue watching them. And I was nowhere near at that point. I was several years beyond their core audience. I was still watching it until Elmo's World came. Elmo fucking ruined Sesame Street. Now it's been turned even more crazy by wokeness. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go offline here after talking about my fun adventures with fucking Barney the dinosaur's throat and hanging him. It was a good time, let me tell you. Being raised in the 90s did have some benefits. Andrew Sobel, can you eat a sturgeon and what's it like? I think that it's edible. I think they're a protected species, though, in Lake Champlain. I think they're considered threatened there, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think that you can eat sturgeon. I don't know why you'd want to. The average ship out on Lake Champlain probably wouldn't be enough to haul it in. You'd probably capsize your little rowboat if you tried to drag a 10-foot sturgeon up on board and it happens to thrash. You might find yourself in a bath that day. That's about all.